Hello, welcome to this game review. In this game we'll have a look at a game where Black played quite well in the opening and a bit later, but then for some reason he allowed counterplay, which was completely unnecessary, and he should have just taken a free piece and won that way. Though eventually it worked out. As we will see, there's a lot to improve upon. So it started as a Sicilian, some Alapin, d5, e5, knight c6. Here knight c6 is not entirely accurate because after d4 now we get the standard advanced variation of the French defense, which of course objectively is not a bad opening for Black, but usually if we play c5 on move 1, our plan is not to get the French, it's to get the Sicilian. So to avoid this, Black could have played more interestingly with d4, not allowing White to play d4 and then continue development. But okay, knight c6, this is fine. Bishop b5 is a strange move. This bishop shouldn't really get exchanged here, but it does. And now Black cannot have any real problems, as White is exchanging his more dangerous bishop, which is usually used to attack, and Black has the bishop here. Now d4 is important, so that Black couldn't play d4 and open his bishop. Okay, then Black takes on d4, and in general, it's always a question as to whether and when to take on d4, and the rule of thumb is that we should take on d4 only when this knight has moved to d2, because otherwise this knight will get a nice square on c3, which is currently unavailable for White. So this is an important point. Perhaps Black should have just continued development like this. This pawn is not really hanging. White cannot usually hang on to such pawns. Black will play b6 and undermine this whole structure, but it's not necessary to give it up. We can even play a5 or something, a4, gaining space, though most logical is maybe something like rook c8, keeping the tension, or even at some point improving the bishop like this. Okay, cd, then knight e7, which is a fine move, but even better was to improve the bishop, as it's not having any future on c6 anyway. And we will see this as a theme. Black will have a lot of chances to improve his, so to say, bad French bishop and put it on b5, which is usually not possible because there's a bishop here, but now there isn't. And now this would give White some problems with castling. But okay, Black improves his position. Bishop e7 is a nice move. Maybe a bit more precise is this, asking this bishop what he's doing. For example, after this, h6. And the bishop will have to go back somewhere. We can continue development with tempo, and Black will have a very nice position after improving his bishops. Okay, bishop e7 is fine. Few moves pass. White didn't really do much. He should usually try to attack on the king side in such positions, because he has a weakness on d4, so eventually Black will be able to attack it, which he does. And here is another chance to play bishop b5. Here, not only are we improving our bishop, but there's also a very concrete threat of taking here and then taking on d4, winning a very important pawn. But okay, rook a8 was played. This is also interesting. Why are we playing the rook to c8 where the bishop is standing? Why not just improve our bishop and then go to the newly opened file? Okay, now again queen a3. Here Black was basically winning if he had played bishop b5, because now Black will also have the file, the c file. White doesn't have a clear way to defend from this simple threat of taking this pawn. For example, if here we can take, if the queen takes, we take the pawn, and if this, we can take on c1 and then take the pawn, again winning a very important pawn, which should be Black's main objective probably, if possible, to win this pawn. So for example, after this also we can take and take. So Black is basically winning the d4 pawn by force, just by improving his bishop to its only good square. But okay, queen a3 was played, but now a2 is easy to defend. And next, White crumbles under the slight pressure. Knight d2, this simply gives up the d4 pawn for nothing, and he continues to undevelop his pieces. And at this point, Black didn't even have to improve his bishop. He won the pawn without the help of the bishop. Okay, knight b5 makes sense. Exchanges happen. Now the bishop is improved. And at this point, black is completely winning for a few reasons. One is his extra pawn. Next is his protected passed pawn on d5. Next is the c-file. Then it's the very better position of the queen and also of the minor piece. This knight is completely useless on b1. And also black can probably win kind of concretely with rook c2. It's a nice move, invading on the second rank. The point is white cannot take. And black will probably take this pawn, and it will soon be time to resign. Okay, a5, this is also an idea to undermine the queenside pawns. h3, a4. After a3, strangely, black doesn't see that he can take this pawn. And again, in every position we have to check for checks, captures, and attacks. This is the priority of chess, taking stuff. Positional stuff is not as important as materialistic nuances. So queen a5. Now again, black is still winning, but he could have already finished the game by now. Okay, h6 is fine, but at this point white could have at least competed for the c-file, and he had some hope of getting his knight out, maybe blockading on d4 somehow, and then the position would not be as clear. Okay, knight c3. Here black sees the fork on d4, which should have basically ended the game. White doesn't really have anything to do about this fork. He tries this move, knight d5. One of the points is that the queen is attacked, so you cannot take the rook. But it should be quite clear that the knight is kind of hanging on d5. The square is always protected whenever we put the pawn on e6 early on. And I assume black wanted to play a bit more smartly by putting the queen here and taking on d5 with the queen, and saying that we will not only have the knight, but we will also keep our structure intact. But that's a bit too so to say, too much, right? There's no reason not to just take the knight. Because another point is that we not only get the knight, we also get a tempo, because now white will have to move the rook, and then we have plenty of time to do something about whatever attack white might be planning here. As we have a piece advantage, we can win in many ways from here. But after this, white has some slight glimmers of chances because he opened our king, and our king went to h7, which is perhaps not the safest place. It could go to the center, maybe even to the queen side, where our pieces and pawns are. But after this, suddenly to win, black has to find the only move, which is queen h8 specifically. And now white's attack should end soon, and black will win. But it's already a problem if we have to find the only move, which is not a very obvious move. Black played queen g8, and white allowed black to exchange queens, which is a big mistake, of course. White could play queen h5, and suddenly black has to give up his queen to stay in the game, surprisingly. Now the queen is attacked. If the queen moves away from this pawn, it will drop and it will be checkmate. So the queen has to go, for example, to f8. But now after ef, the threat is rook to g7, and there's not much black can do about this. Also, not to mention this bishop is attacked, but that's actually not even the biggest threat. So here white would be close to winning suddenly. And all of this counterplay was really unnecessary. Black could have just taken this knight. But at this point it became quite easy. Black inserted this check, exchanged queens, and from here it should be quite easy to win. White's only chance is this pawn, but it's quite easy to deal with. The king can do this job, and from here it's kind of not interesting anymore. But this was the point. Here black didn't find queen h8 and gave white real chances to draw the game by putting the queen on the h-file or even to f4. And here this attack, while these pieces are on the queen side, it is quite a serious attack, as the pawn will also help. So this was unnecessary. Just take the piece. As they say, the best solution is usually the most simple solution. So here queen d8 was completely unnecessary.